What if the quietest person on your street is also the richest one? Passive income is money that keeps arriving after the work is done, sometimes before any real work starts. It's not magic, it's structure. The 5 streams we're covering require no audience, no brand, no clout. Here's the uncomfortable truth. In 2023, the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis reported that Americans spent roughly $4.7 trillion on personal consumption. The Federal Reserve's survey of consumer finances put the median household's liquid savings under $8,000. That gap is the whole problem. Your neighbor leases a luxury SUV and posts every meal. You've seen the lifestyle. What you haven't seen is the balance sheet. And that's where the real story lives. The Federal Reserve's 2022 survey of consumer finances found that roughly 45% of American families hold 0 directly owned stocks or investment accounts. Broke flexers are common. Quiet compounders are the exception. Stream 1. Dividend stocks. A dividend is a cash payment a company sends shareholders, typically every quarter, for owning a slice of the business. You don't post, you don't pitch, you just own. As of 2023, the S&P 500 Dividend Aristocrats Index tracked 67 companies that had raised their dividends every single year for at least 25 consecutive years. Johnson & Johnson paid a dividend yield of roughly 3% in 2023. $10,000 invested returned about $300 in cash that year, just for holding. Reinvest that payout, and the compounding effect snowballs quietly over decades. The entry point is lower than most people think. Brokerages like Fidelity and Charles Schwab now offer fractional shares, meaning you can start with $1. You don't need $10,000 on day one. You need consistency. Here's where it gets harder. A suspiciously high dividend yield, say 12%, often signals a company bleeding cash. It's called a dividend trap. The payout looks generous right until the company slashes it. Boring, stable yields beat flashy ones. Stream 2. REITs, Real Estate Investment Trusts. A REIT is a company that owns income-producing real estate, apartments, warehouses, hospitals, and is legally required to distribute at least 90% of its taxable income to shareholders every year. Before REITs, owning commercial real estate meant enormous capital and a mortgage. Congress created the REIT structure in 1960 specifically to give everyday investors access to those returns. Today, you can own a slice of a Manhattan office tower for under $50. Realty Income Corporation, ticker symbol O, has paid a monthly dividend without interruption since 1994. That's over 30 consecutive years of monthly checks. They own more than 15,000 properties across the US and Europe. Monthly, not quarterly, monthly. Here's the counterintuitive twist. When the Federal Reserve raised rates aggressively in 2022 and 2023, many REITs dropped 20 to 30% in share price, even while their underlying properties kept generating rent. Price and income can move in opposite directions. Stream 3. Peer lending. Platforms like Prosper and Lending Club connect borrowers who need personal loans with investors willing to fund them, cutting out the bank entirely. Capital flows from one account to another through the platform, and the interest payments reverse that flow back to the funding side every month. Prosper grades loans from AA to HR, high risk. Lower grade loans pay higher interest, sometimes 10 to 14% annually. Higher grade loans pay 5 to 7%. Spreading across dozens of loans limits the damage when any single borrower defaults. On Prosper, the minimum investment per loan note is $25. With $1,000, you can spread across 40 individual loans, which historically cuts default risk. The realistic entry point is $500 to $1,000 to build a meaningful, diversified position. Here's a stake raise most guides skip. In 2008, the SEC forced Prosper to shut down temporarily while it registered as a securities platform. Investors were locked out for 6 months. Peer lending is illiquid. You can't always exit when you want to. Remember that quiet neighbor from the opening. They're not betting everything on one stream. The real stealth wealth move is stacking these income sources so that when one dips, others hold steady. Diversification isn't a buzzword, it's a shock absorber. Stream 4. Digital product licensing. You create a digital asset once, a stock photo, a music loop, a spreadsheet template, a font, and license it repeatedly. Every download is a royalty. The file doesn't deplete. The same asset earns indefinitely. Shutterstock pays contributors between 15 and 40 cents per image download. Envato's Audio Jungle pays music creators 33 to 55% of each sale. A single well-tagged stock photo or audio loop can pull dozens of downloads per month for years after upload. You don't need a following. You need a useful file. Canva Pro costs $13 a month and lets anyone build professional templates. GIMP is free for photo editing. The barrier is creative effort, not capital, which makes this the most accessible stream on this list. New question. If anyone can upload, why would buyers find your file? The answer is metadata. Shutterstock's own contributor documentation confirms that keyword-optimized uploads receive up to 3 times more downloads than untagged equivalents. Tags are everything. Stream 5. High-yield savings ladders. A savings ladder splits cash across multiple high-yield accounts or certificates of deposit with staggered maturity dates. So money is always maturing, always liquid, and always earning above-average interest. In early 2024, the national average savings account rate at traditional banks sat at 0.46%, according to the FDIC. Online banks like Marcus by Goldman Sachs and Ally were offering 4.5 to 5.0% APY. On $10,000, that gap is $454 per year. Here's how the ladder works. You split $5,000 into 5 $1,000 CDs maturing every 3 months. When the first matures, you roll it into a new 12-month CD at the best available rate. You always have cash maturing. Here's the honest caveat. In 2022, U.S. inflation peaked at 9.1%, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. A 5% savings yield that year lost purchasing power in real terms. Ladders preserve and grow capital. They don't replace equity investing. Zoom out. These 5 streams aren't competing strategies, they're layers. Dividend stocks and REITs handle long-term growth. Peer lending adds higher yield exposure. Digital licensing creates effort once earned forever income. Savings ladders protect your liquid foundation. A person investing $300 per month across all 5, starting at age 30, could realistically accumulate over $60,000 in assets by 40, assuming a 6% blended average annual return. Wait until 35 instead, at that same 6% annualized rate, and the projected balance at 40 drops to roughly $38,000, a $22,000 gap created by 5 years of delay, not by any change in strategy. $300 a month across these 5 streams, starting at age 30, could realistically build over $60,000 in assets by 40, assuming modest average returns. That's not retirement money. That's an invisible paycheck that funds the next decade. Here's the mechanic that makes all 5 streams more powerful together. Compounding. Waiting just 5 extra years to start. Age 35 instead of 30 costs more than $20,000 in final balance at the same contribution rate. Starting quietly beats starting perfectly. Back to that flashy neighbor. Their leased SUV depreciates 15 to 25% the moment it leaves the lot, according to Edmunds' 2023 depreciation data. Every dollar quietly compounding in a dividend account moves in the opposite direction. Assets appreciate, liabilities bleed. Here's what makes this concrete. Vanguard's 2023 How America Saves report found that participants who automated their contributions Fixed monthly transfers, no manual intervention, accumulated 47% more in retirement assets over 10 years than those who contributed manually. Automation isn't a personality trait. It's a measurable performance advantage. Build the system, set the transfers, and the compounding does the rest. Here's the fact most people miss. IRS statistics of income data shows that taxpayers reporting passive income, rental income, royalties, and partnership distributions skew toward middle incomes, not the ultra-wealthy. The largest passive income bracket by filer count is households earning between $50,000 and $200,000 annually. Passive income isn't a billionaire's tool. It's already being used by people who look exactly like your neighbors. Your move. Open one high-yield savings account this week. That single step funds the foundation for every other stream on this list. The invisible paycheck doesn't start when you're ready. It starts when you start. Watch the next episode to go deeper on dividend stacking.